What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Danny the Bull, here with Sleeping Comics, one of the best in the space. I want to thank you for coming on the channel for this live stream.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
I've been looking forward to, I've tried to link up with you a couple times, right? But, schedules are busy and whatnot. But I've been looking forward to talking to you because, as I just said off camera right before we started, you're a true collector. And, it's great to hear that perspective and that passion. When they say, the Veve, Veve is like collectors at heart. It's about collectors at heart. That really applies to you. So you have that unique perspective that you bring to it, and you have years of experience both in collecting and in business. And so it's great to put all those thoughts together and engage in some great conversation. So thanks for coming through.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, no. I mean, everybody always says, "Oh, you're a true collector," or "I'm a true," I think everybody's a collector in their own way, and that's fine. If you're just starting and you own a couple things, or or you've been doing it for years and years and years, it's all part of the process, all part of the game. And it doesn't, and there's been times when I've stopped collecting for a little bit, and then you get back into, and I can see a bunch of stuff behind you, and I've watched your channel. You're the same way. I mean, it's all, you can't do it wrong.
Yeah, it's so true getting pulled back in, right? Because like mostly I collected baseball cards a lot growing up, and there were times like I'd fall out of it for like a decade, and then I'd get sucked back in, and I'd be like, man, I can't believe how much I missed this. So it's definitely like a bug that you catch, and it's part of the reason why we're all here in this community.
Yeah, it's I in some of my videos I've talked about kind of the three things I think, and there's obviously more than three, but
Yeah.
it kind of starts. I think a lot of it starts with people saying, "Hey, maybe I can make some money here." I think that's real natural. Um, and then um, and then it kind of goes to the, "Hey, I remember this as a kid," or you have some sort of nostalgia, something that I used to have these comics when I was a kid, or I used to have these collectible, these figures when I'll go back and try and buy some of those, right? And then eventually I think it's just a combination of it all, and I've said, if you can get a collectible, and there's something memorable from personal a personal event, then it creates so much more. So in other words, what they have at Veve, if you go to one of these events and you meet, David or you or somebody else, and you have an experience with a particular event, they sign it or something like that, then it becomes even more than it all changes, right? And that's happened for me with comics. I've met the artists, or various things, with my family or other things, and then it's a lot. Then everything, it really falls into place.
Yeah, because then you're talking about personal connection and connecting to emotion, right? And it hits a bit different.
For
How
sure.
how did your collecting journey start?
Um, well, the stuff that you see now generally is more of in the past, maybe 5-7 years. But I mean, I liked comics as a kid. I didn't have any money to buy comics. A friend of mine actually had a lot of comics. I would go over there and read some of his comics. But then, kind of when I was maybe a little bit in my early teens, I did have a couple comics, but not much. But I did like them, and I couldn't. I didn't have a lot of money to go buy them or whatever. So then, when I got older, obviously the MCU movies really brought me back to that whole nostalgia, and so somewhere in there, I was just like, I'm going to start reading some comics again, get back into it. And then, it starts, and then it takes over, and then you have lots of comics and you can't control it.
Yeah. What are your favorite ones that you have?
My favorite comics.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some, I'm all over the board. I really like almost all of everything I have. I like, I've sold most of the stuff I don't, but I mean, I have like a full run of Immortal Hulk. I love that run. And it's relatively recent, but I thought it was very, very innovative, and I was excited when it came out. It had a lot of press around it, and it was just a fun one to read. And those are the ones that my full runs are some of the ones that I really like. I have a full run of not the latest Miles, because that's going, but the run before the latest Miles, the one that started in 2019. I have a full run of that one, and that was a great run. I recommend that to everybody. And we have one of those on the app, number 10 of that run.
Mm.
And then I think number 1 of that run is one of the one of ones. They did the original art, so I'm sure that's going to be worth a ton of money, whatever. I don't know what that sold for. I'm sure it sold for a ton. But yeah, so, and then of course I have some really old grails, you know, like my AF-15 or Incredible Hulk #1 or X-Men #1. Some of those, obviously, you got to love those. You know, those are some of the OG ones, right?
Are those pieces that like you would part with at some point, or do you like plan on passing them down? Like, what's your long term?
I think I would probably sell them. You know, my family, my kids, maybe my oldest daughter's a little bit into it, but they're not really into it, you know, so they're not going to want to, you know, go through the different long boxes and pull out, you know, ASM 252. They're going to have no clue what that is. They're not, you know.
I felt the same. Like I had a good baseball card collection. I sold a bunch of it off to, you know, vintage stuff to raise money for during this crypto bear market, because I wanted to stockpile as much crypto as I could.
Smart.
And part of my thought was, I'm middle aged almost. 30 years from now, my son doesn't love like baseball the way I love it, and my daughter doesn't like baseball at all. They're not going to have the same connection to this. So I pulled the trigger on that, but I think I'm going to circle back in because it's just fun to chase things and finally get them. It gets delivered to you. So do you want to share a couple of comics with us?
Sure. You know, we were talking about earlier, I don't know, I've shown a lot of my comics. Well, I have a lot of comics, but most of them are just like on Veve, right? They're not necessarily, and that's why I say they're not necessarily worth all ton of money. They might be worth something to me, but there's definitely, you know, out on the open market, they're worth nothing. But because the show is coming and hopefully you have some Star Wars fans in here, so I thought I would show some Star Wars comics because that's fun. So anybody that follows Star Wars knows that in a month, I think the new Ahsoka show will be starting up. Did you watch the Star Wars Rebels show at all?
I didn't know. My son watched it. I caught glimpses of it, pieces of it. Yeah.
It is sorry. It is, I think, arguably the best Star Wars show. I like it better than Clone Wars.
Wow.
And it's all new characters, and I think it's we can prove that we can do Star Wars, and it doesn't have to be about the Star Wars saga, the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
So all the characters there are really, really good. And I think the Ahsoka series looks like it's Rebels seasons 5. But of course, in the Clone Wars and here's one here. I'll just show this one just because I got it about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago for $50.
Nice.
First print. You'll recognize this one.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So it's not really high grade, but I'll take it. It's awesome. It looks great. And it didn't cost me very much. So yeah, there's a lot of prints of these. I think there's like four prints. So this is the first print. Batman 423, and obviously now with McFarlane coming out with their stuff. I mean, this is a comic. I think you can find them all over the place. I think, you know, Veve or McFarlane, probably one to get. You don't have to get it slabbed. I always tell you, we can get it raw. It's just a fun one to have.
Yeah. How do you like them slabbed? Like, then you can't read them. Does it take away anything, or?
I've gone back and forth. There was a period of time where I was, like hated slabs and I love slabs, when you want to display them or you want to protect them, it's the way to go. Right.
Yeah.
And of course, if you want to sell them, because then you don't get in some huge dispute about, I don't know, the 7.5, I don't know, 6.5, And then of course, for really expensive ones, I just buy graded because, I mean, if you're spending $10,000 or $20,000 on a comic, you don't really want to get scammed or something like that. I'm not interested in getting scammed for $20,000. So anyway, so the Ahsoka show is coming out, and this one is a tough one to find, really tough. This is Clone Wars #1. This is the first appearance of Ahsoka.
Oh, nice.
So everybody will ask, I'll answer. This one's probably worth about $1,000.
Do you expect a pump around when the show comes out?
Yeah, it already is pumped. And it's come back a little bit. it went down, just like everything. Now it's kind of back a little bit. But you're surprising not that many people even know who Ahsoka is, and I think the
Yeah.
show was really going to help her. And 9.8, I think it might be $1,800 or something like that. But yeah, this one's probably worth maybe $900. Don't quote me on that, but it's a fun one to have.
Yeah, it's nice. You might get me into collecting comics now.
Well, hey man.
Drag
So
me
there
down.
is a very super ultra rare version of this cover variant. And the cover's actually, the art is done by Dave Filoni, who's the writer of Clone Wars and Ahsoka. Also has a lot to do with The Mandalorian. And that one, I think, $5,000 or something like that, if you can find that one.
Yeah.
Very, very rare. In a 9.8, I'm talking about. If you were to find like a 9.4, it's still probably $1,000 or something like that. Should I just keep going here, or should we stop? I got
a couple more. Yeah.
4 more.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so if you watch Rebels, you saw in the trailer, one of the key characters is going to be Sabine. She's a Mandalorian. And so this is the first appearance of Sabine. It's also the first appearance of Ezra, who's another key person we did see a glimpse of in the trailer.
Yeah.
These are characters that are going to be really, really big going forward. So this one, not financial advice, but in a 9.8, and this there's not, I mean, in the grand scheme of amount printed, there's not that many printed. You can get this for $400, 9.8. I think on eBay right now. So maybe something to look at. But Sabine, who is if you watch the Ahsoka trailer, she's the one who has the colored hair.
Yeah.
And Ezra, you see a little glimpse of him in a hologram. I won't ruin anything, but he's, going to be a part of this. I'm sure he's going to be a part of this season as well. So Ezra and Sabine are going to be 2 big characters going forward. And she's a Mandalorian, so do you think she could show up in the Mandalorian? They could do some cross. I'm sure she's going to be a big character going forward. So then the other one, you saw a glimpse of him, and we have him on the Veve app, is Admiral Thrawn. So this is the first appearance of Admiral Thrawn. Wow. I got this comic for $1.
Wow.
And so, unfortunately, it wasn't a 9.8.
$1?
Yeah, I bought it raw and I graded it.
Wow.
So I'm probably $30 in on this thing. It's probably worth, in a 9.8, it's probably worth about $1,500, maybe something like that. Don't quote me. This one's probably worth maybe $300-$400, maybe. But yeah, Admiral Thrawn's going to be big going forward. And so if you find this anywhere, pick it up. Don't quote me on these prices, but yeah, that's kind of what I feel like. And then this is the one that we have on the app. So that one is his first appearance. This is the one we have on the app, which is Thrawn 1, which is not his first appearance, but it's his first solo one. This is the secret rare. Very, very rare comic. Super rare. Like, I think there are only, someone said there's only like 400 of them printed or something like that.
Wow.
And then graded, there's only like
what's
75 graded or something like that.
I was gonna say, what's the pop on a 9.6?
This is probably worth maybe, well, this one is signed by the author and it has this sketch of Darth Vader.
Oh, dope.
It's literally the only one I've ever seen that's signed and has a sketch. So I don't know. Some guy offered me $2,000 a while back ago and I said no. I don't know how much it's worth. Probably 2,000 maybe.
Yeah.
But more maybe after the show, right? If people like him in the show, maybe. And then I have another one just for later that's kind of fun if we want to keep going. It's not Star Wars related.
Stan had a comic question. Does McFarlane make your top 10 comic artist?
I'll just say yes.
Yeah.
It changes all the time. But yeah, I mean he's up there for sure.
Yeah.
And that's such a personal thing. Some people, hate Todd. Some people love Todd. I have that over my shoulder here. You can see the ASM 300 right here.
Yeah.
That is signed by Stan Lee and Todd.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's so that one's kind of a grail just to have both of their
what would that go for?
That's a 9.6. I don't know how much I paid for it. I don't know. I didn't pay that much for it. I don't know how much it's worth now. I guess maybe $1,000. I don't know.
That's it. Signed by Stan and.
Well, a 9.8 of ASM 300, I think is probably around 2,000-3,000. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
So a 9.6. That's why I guessed 1,000. It could be more. I don't know.
Pretty sick. So you've been in this, space, the comics, the physical comic space, and I'm sure there's a community there, right?
Oh,
What's
huge.
what's that community? What does that community think about this side of it, the digital side of comic collecting, and what's happening over in Veve? Is there a lot of pushback there?
Yeah. I actually think it's gotten better, but yeah, especially when I my channel was around for about a year before I moved to mostly Veve, almost all Veve content now. And I just talked about spec comics, and, it was great. And I think I might've had 700, 800 subscribers or something like that. But so I got to know a lot of the YouTubers and met a lot of people. I know a lot of people in the physical book community. And when I kind of switched over into doing NFTs and Veve and whatnot, people were a lot of people DM me and said I was crazy and an idiot, and and then of course now that a lot of NFTs and everything has gone down, it's a tenth of what it was. They can DM me and say I'm an idiot and you've lost all your money, and so it's part of the game, right? But I'd say 10% of the people are open-minded towards it. I mean, it's just a guess.
Do you think that gap gets bridged over time, and how does that happen?
I think it does. I think at least 2 people that are big YouTubers I know are very open-minded to it and own Veve NFTs. They don't broadcast it on their channels, but I know that they do. And I think it won't be. I've always said that it's going to take 2 things. We're not going to get all of them, right? If we could even get 30%, it'd be great, right? But it's going to be money. I mean, I'm not to be crass about it, but I mean, they're going to see an opportunity to make some money here. They know about comics. You don't need to teach them what ASM 300 is, or you know what I mean. That's where they'll have an advantage. They're going to come in and just be like, oh, everybody's sleeping on this, whatever ASM 6, whatever, for whatever reason. So they'll have a lot of experience with that. So I think it initially would be with money, and then the other thing I think said was it has to be something that you can get that you can't get with comics. And there's 2 things that I think are there, and that is the capability that maybe there'll be some weird utility that if you have all the ASM comics, then you'll get some sort of access to Marvel at San Diego Comic-Con or something crazy like that, which could be true, especially when you're talking not necessarily about the comics but the collectibles. So if you own the entire Spider-Man original set, maybe the season 1 set, maybe you get something. I don't know, right? We're making up stuff.
Right.
And then the other thing is, I think that reading the comics in AR currently is actually very difficult. I would prefer to just read them on an iPad or something like that. But now you wear the Apple Vision goggles or something like that, and you can kind of lay back and sit back and have the comic in front. It's going to be a completely different experience. And I think people might be interested in that. And when you think about some of the incredible panels that are in all these comics as you're reading, that is compelling. And I think for a comic book person, that could, that's something.
Yeah. And what, in terms of like creating a sticky, I guess, experience, right? What role do you think the Veveverse plays in it, if any?
For physical comics or just in general, anybody?
In general, I mean, in terms of keeping their core audience engaged. We know that the Veveverse has been promised, delayed a bit, but it's part of the grand vision. And I think maybe because in terms of insofar as utility, the way Dan has talked about it in interviews, he's basically said owning the collectible is the utility, right? And when you buy something, a physical, the ownership is the utility. So I'm not sure, where they go in terms of utility other than like some airdrops or whatever. So my thinking is that the sticky aspect of it will be through like gamifying through like MCP and then the Veveverse. And what are your thoughts on the VV verse and what they need to do there to make it, a sticky, engaging experience for people?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I think so. The VV verse, there's different levels of it, and my understanding of it initially is that what we're going to get, hopefully this year, we don't know,
Yeah.
is a glorified vault. The vault we have right now is cool. You put the stuff in, you can have 5 of the vaults. You can, have a Marvel one and a Disney one, whatever you want, and it's fun. You play around, whatever.
Yeah.
And people are absolutely unbelievably creative with it, right?
Mhm.
And I think that the VV-verse 1 will be a glorified. You'll be able to put comics in it, which will be a big deal. And there's some elements of it you can invite other people in or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure how that kind of plays
It's
out, but it
important
feels
them
like
in.
it's going to be kind of like that spatial app. I don't know
Mhm.
if you played around with that at all, which is spectacular. And you've seen people put VV NFTs in
Yeah.
that.
Sanjay. Yeah. I've
Yeah,
seen it.
Sanjay is the guy who comes to mind. But
Yeah.
is it game changing? Is it sticky? Now everybody and their brother is, pushing each other to stay on the app or to get their brother to get involved. Doesn't feel like it, does it? But I just think it's an evolution for me. And just happens to be from my own experience. I've said this before, is that I played a lot of World of Warcraft when I was younger. I don't know if you ever
Mhm.
played that game, but it's its own metaverse, millions of people playing at the same time. It's this kind of world and people go in there and hang out and you can go on adventures and do all kinds of crazy stuff. When they said Viviverse initially, I thought that was what they were saying. And it's not like that's not possible. That tech is there, right? Blizzard created it and a lot of other people have attempted to. So it's not to say that it won't go there. And it's not to say that, but there was stickiness to World of Warcraft. There's element of the game element, but there's also the community element of it. And in World of Warcraft, they celebrate different. They have different themed months. So in Christmas, they have all kinds of Christmas stuff, and in the summer, they have this. So that's kind of the blueprint in terms of like where it could be in its most grandiose in my mind. And there is an element of pure community there, which they are really the tech gap that is filling that is YouTube right here, where people are watching us, and there's some community aspect as they're talking in the chat. And then, of course, there's the Twitter aspect of it and the Twitter spaces. So that is what kind of holds in my mind. That is the tech. That is the, that's bonding us all together for Vivi when maybe you're not at a con, all going to the parties and whatnot. So can the Vivi verse fill in that gap and add to what is already there? I don't know. In its current and version 1 form, it doesn't seem like it's advanced enough.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, do you think, you see all like the headlines recently? I've noticed over the last few days, and I think it's centered around the Stan Lee drop. I don't know if it's part of a marketing campaign, but so the Bloomberg article, there was Von Doom, I think his name is, he's in the NFT space. He's got like 200,000 subs or followers or whatever. Part of like that Web3 crowd. He was touting Vivi. Bitboy channel was just talking about the Stan Lee drop. Do you think it's a matter of time before like the outsiders take notice?
Yeah. I mean, it's so difficult to know what is the trigger, um, that's going to get people to be involved. I mean, sadly, I think the trigger is, making
Money.
money. So and it's a narrative, how this is the world, how it is works now. It's a narrative. So it's this narrative of crypto is a scam, it's dead, it's dying,
Right.
which you talk to a lot of people and that's a narrative that they hear, but that was the way it was back in 2000. I lose track of all the different times it's gone up and down, but I think that was the narrative in 2019. Don't quote me on one of the years where there was, and then it kind of went up, whatever.
Well, the cycle, 17,
The
2000
cycles, the different cycles. I know
cycle.
you
Yeah,
talk a lot
yeah,
about that on your channel
yeah.
here, but I can't remember when the last bear market was. But it does kind of feel like we're on the verge of kind of moving forward in another bull run here, which would be great. And the narrative will change. And so if Vivi can be a part of that, I think we're in the right place. If Vivi misses, then of course, then it misses. But it feels like the other thing, which of course is what we all want, is in some way, shape, or form, can Veve go from this kind of fringe investment type thing to it's part of the main core entertainment package for some of these big brands? And so what I mean by that is, like, when you think about Marvel, and I mean, I only talk about Marvel because I know more about it than Disney or whatever, is when you're talking about the Marvel entertainment package, you're talking about the movies, you're talking about Disney Plus, you're talking about the Funko Pops, you're talking, I mean, that's kind of like, when you that
brand,
pop culture, the comics and the cosplay, but elements of that were not part of the mainstream, but they've seeped in. So cosplay is big now, but it wasn't, for a long time, right? Going to the conventions was, you got to be some sort of crazy nerd geek to go. Now everybody, I want to go to one of those conventions, right? So if it can seep into the point at which, we get the digital NFTs, those are cool, and then I take pictures of them with my friends along with my Funko Pops, and I dress, we're good to go. If that happens, we're good to go.
It's funny that you say that, because a lot of these things, these genres, these like anime, for instance, it was very fringe and it was part of nerd culture, right? It was all part of nerd culture, but eventually nerd culture becomes pop culture.
So, well, you hope, right? And I'm like the biggest nerd of them all, because when I was a kid, I played Dungeons and Dragons. I read, I'm like the worst. So it's always crazy to me to see how mainstream, for example, Dungeons and Dragons is now. People are constantly asking me, like, do you know how to play that? Have you ever played that before? You know what I mean? And so you're right. A lot of this stuff goes from the fringe, but not everything makes it, right? Correct. And so the question will be is, digital collectibles, NFTs, can it make the jump? And then the other question would be, because most of my collection is in Veve, is Veve one of the ones that makes it? Is it going to be more, trying to think of some AOL, or is it going to be Facebook? You know what I mean? All those, they came at different times. That was a bad, but you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Like a MySpace, Facebook sort of thing.
That's a better now.
Yeah. Who wins the game? And that leads to the question, or like the current topic at hand. One of the, ongoing topics is the notion of Web3 principles and adhering to them, and, Veve being more Web 2. And now we see like McFarlane coming out, and Stan had asked, I think I started the question, are you going for the McFarlane drop tomorrow?
I'm not sure. I have McFarlane stuff. I have some of their initial stuff. I know you're a big whale there, so I can't compete.
It's not hard to be a whale.
I have the Spawn one. I have the Dragon. I have some others. I do have a bat cowl. I have 3 bat cowls.
You connect the wallet on the app?
Yep, I connected it all up. So.
Oh, you got to go for the drop.
Yeah, I'll probably go for it.
How could you not?
I'll probably go for it. So yeah, no, I'm excited, but I do think that, these Web3 philosophies, whatever you want to call them, and obviously there's people that adhere to them and Veve doesn't, or whatever, I don't, it's all, it reminds me so much of the internet, at the beginning of the internet, are you an internet company or not, or even before then it was, are you a global company or not? What is your internet plan? All these, it's the same thing. What is your Web3 strategy? Whatever, so it's, I think it's more about creating a company that has products and customers that, that are dedicated to it. And the Web3 philosophies of decentralization, obviously the tech that allows for digital collecting, which is a relatively new tech, which didn't exist, as we know, whatever. I don't know when it was actually came about, but obviously it wouldn't exist without a blockchain concept,
right? Which
is why it didn't exist 10 years ago, right? So I think they're all really, really interesting, and it's just going to come down to, really come down to, I think the interoperability that people talk about is tied to, and I'm not an expert, so I'm out on a limb here. I know you've had a lot of people on here that know a lot more than me, but I'm just talking personally.
Right.
This is where, when the interoperability, like arguments or discussions, whatever you want to call them, they kind of fall along these different tracks. And really, business in my mind is always about a promise. And if you can't fulfill your promises, your business kind of falls apart. So in other words, especially in collecting, one of the most important promises of them all is that you're going to be here in 100 years, because that's the concept of collecting. Like if I think your company and your brand's going to disappear, then I'm worried. Then it's a Beanie Babies thing. Everybody's, right? I'm not again, nothing against Beanie Babies, but the brand isn't as successful now as it was, way back when. So the concept is, Spider-Man has been around for a really long time. Do we think it's going to be around for another 40 years? Feels like it. Nobody knows what's going to be around in 1,000 years, but Spider-Man seems like it's going to be pretty good to go in another 40 years. So that's the promise. And that allows you, that creates the collectability and the fact that it's going to be worth something later. So when you're talking about interoperability, people mix in this concept of the promise of, are you guys going to be around? Because they think that the ownership is going to allow it to exist forever. Do you see what I'm saying? But it's actually two separate things. Spider-Man is probably going to exist with or without Web3, right? That brand is so strong.
Yeah.
So the other thing I think that interoperability, people kind of confuse which once again, super important, is this ability to sell it in different marketplaces.
Yeah.
Like that's almost a separate deal. Now I get it. It's a part of interoperability. Like in Veve, you can't sell the things elsewhere. But in a weird way, they used to actually sell them elsewhere in other marketplaces. They used to sell the NFTs on eBay. You could buy them because you could transfer.
Yeah, correct.
So I'm not saying that's interoperable. I'm not that stupid, right? But what I'm saying is that when you're carving up why people want interoperability, the concept of being able to sell it on OpenSea or other places, that promise could be fulfilled in various ways, right? That's basically what I'm trying to say. So we'll see what happens. Some of these promises might happen. It's just that they may not be exactly the way people perceive them and how we normally perceive them. So for example, if you could sell all your stuff on eBay and Veve allowed it and did some sort of relationship with eBay, and then they would initiate the transfer, you'd pay for, what I'm saying? I don't think they're going to do that because they like a closed ecosystem. They like the fact that they need their money. They're going to somehow try to owe me.
Yeah. So do you think interoperability is not coming because of that? Because they want that closed ecosystem. They want that cut of every deal.
I'm not sure. I really don't. I think that, now, some people, the other thing, which of course people say, which again, get back to promises, is that, without interoperability, people somehow think it's a rug pull and that's imminent at any moment. It's a scam, right? Is it? We don't know, right? We're still trying to figure that out. We don't know, but on the other part, at a certain point, at what point in time do you say it's not a scam? After we've been with these things and had our collectibles for 10 years, is it not a scam or rug pull? At what point is it not a rug pull anymore? Right.
Right.
But, I think they have a lot of work to do and they're trying to figure out what makes sense to make their company grow.
Yeah.
And I think they've done some sort of analysis that interoperability, and they've said this also, that some of the licensors are not open-minded to it yet. So that in combination with their limited resources, it's just not part of what their most important directive is right now. And I think their most important directive is, let's get more users, but that's just me.
Yeah. But then you go back to promises, right? And you'd mentioned how businesses who don't keep their promises, don't last. One of the things that they did say was that interoperability was on the way, right? And people made some financial decisions based off of that. And so do you think that because they said it, they have to keep that word? I
think they need to, yeah. But not all companies can fulfill all their promises, right? I mean, they might fulfill, and what point, and I'm not trying to give them a pass because I think it's important to do what you say. Right. But if they do 90% of what they say and then the 10% they don't because of, market has changed or the world has changed or they don't have enough money to do it, is it a rug pull and you sell everything? And yeah, I mean, if you feel that way, you got to do what you got to do. Right. But, I know the person who's running companies, I started my first company when I was 21. I have a lot of grandiose ideas throughout my life as running companies, and not all of them come to fruition.
How does
But
that?
you try, right? You're trying to run
Yeah,
the company. You're trying to stay. Running a company is just basically trying to stay alive, unless you're like maybe like Apple, then you just like dominate, right? Or
right. Then it's just trying to grow as big as possible and
right.
eat everyone.
No, I'm sure they have problems too, except their problems are, we need to make another $100 billion.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Right.
How does like your background in business and growing businesses inform, your perception of Vivi?
I probably have a lot longer leash than a lot of other people do because I know how hard it is to start a company from scratch. You just literally you have super limited resources and you're running around with your hair on fire trying to keep your product running and scaling while trying to be innovative and all these other things. It's exhilarating, but it's a lot of work. And so the problem, one of the battles in that this is that I was not used to in other companies that I've seen or invested in or whatever it might be is the amount of scams in the Web3 world.
Yeah.
I mean, they're legit. Go talk to those people who lost money in FTX. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
there is a legitimate amount of serious scammers in the world of Web3. And so that looms so big, I think, when you think about Veve or any of these projects, because people are so scared.
So that's in the back of people's minds, right? When they see them say one thing and not quite deliver it in a timely fashion, in the back of your mind, it's like, is this another rug pull? Because it's part of the common language. It's part of our language now and the
And I
space.
think it's and there's no guardrails. So like when you go on Ameritrade and you're like, I've never heard of this stock before and it's $1, I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna do a little research. It could be a scam. It could be a pump and dump. It happens all the time in the stock market. If you've been involved with it around for and penny stocks, dollar stock,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. There's still guardrails there to even get to that point. If you're going public with anything, the SEC, all the amount of due diligence at various. I'm not saying once again there's not corruption there, right? But for the most part, there's been some independent party has done some sort of investigation, you would think, into some of these companies that are publicly traded, right? So that by the time you get to Ameritrade or whatever, and you're dinking around and buying and selling and attempting to make some money there's some sort of analysis has been done. Whereas here, in this world, it is the wild, wild west.
Yeah. So how do you grade their performance then?
I give them a B+. Maybe I'm an easy grader. I don't know. I just think it's tough. They're dealing with a lot of these IPs. They obviously had, I think, a 6 or 8 month lull there where they were not doing much. And that would be like last year. I mean, I'm sure they were doing a lot, but it didn't feel like it. Feels like with bringing on Mitch and some of these newer people, they're really moving now.
There is more of a cadence now of getting things done, right? The crafting and burning, the localization in the app.
Search bar.
Yeah. Search bar. And localization seems to like kind of gone on. I remember a year and a half ago, everyone like, I can't wait for localization. That's going to be huge. And like Taps did a video on it. And now they got the languages in there and it's kind of like a nothing burger, right? Probably because.
Well, I think it's like, maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't know what. It'll be interesting to see really with McFarlane, really how much interoperability makes a difference. And I think it's little nugget here and a little nugget here adds up, right? I do believe that. But it depends on what how you're measuring it, right? So like if you're measuring for new users, I don't know how much that helps because new users, they barely understand how this tech works. So when you're talking to them about interoperability, that's like way beyond, I would think at some point they're going to be very interested in it. Initially, they're just interested in, hey, like, I download the app, I put some money in, I use these gems to buy things. Or in the case of, obviously in McFarlane, I got to get my MetaMask or whatever it is set up. I mean, there's just the basic mechanics I think they're trying to get to before they're like asking more, but maybe that's an important element of it all. I mean, it'll be interesting to find out if that you know, we've heard, you hear about all these things and you don't know until they actually happens. You know, I remember, you know, there's all these things they say on the app, you know, once we get this, it'll be a game changer, right?
Yeah.
You know, once we, you know, get the web portal and people can put in money and not have to go through Apple, and where, you know, they could only take so much money through the Apple app, then it's going to be a game changer. Maybe it has, I don't, you know, but
Yeah.
really in the end, for me, it's always about users.
It's interesting because people point to the lack of interoperability, the lack of like Web3 principles as Vivi's greatest weakness. In the end, it could be their greatest strength, if because they're able to onboard people so easily, right? And they've cut out like the crypto back end of it, so it's invisible. And you know, the Web3 people are it's a niche, right? But there's the wider audience doesn't know how to set up a MetaMask, and so it's interesting to now, you know, with these Web3 platforms coming out, how this all develops.
I mean, eventually there'll be tech that will do it, right? And we'll be
Yes.
able to adhere all the principles, not all, but a lot of the principles. Some of the principles maybe we think are important will end up not being important, but I think that feels like a pretty important principle. True ownership, being able to take your stuff from this cold storage. That seems like one of the most important concepts behind Web3, right? And so I think it'll be there. I think everybody will, it'll be accepted. Everybody will do it. It'll be good to go. I can only go back to what I know in beginning of, you know, websites. So a website was really, really difficult. You know, you wanted to create a website, you got to go buy a domain name. Well, I don't know how to buy a domain name. Okay, once you buy a domain name, you got to set up your DNS servers. Oh my God, I don't know how to do. So with all these different pieces, I just want email, man. I just want email. You know that. So you know, like GoDaddy and some of these websites, they really made it easy. You go there, you type it in, you hit the button, get email, done. You put your money in, and I think there'll be companies, and Veve's obviously trying to get there. A lot of companies tried to get there during the internet boom as well, but different tech had to be invented for it to happen. And I think that tech will be invented for it to happen. And then it'll just be as easy as going to set up a bank account or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and you see like different people. I don't know if you're familiar with like Solana. They came out with a phone, and the purpose of it was to like streamline that process, make it easier, have like the decentralized apps built in and whatever. And they talked about their purpose for it wasn't that even if it failed, they want to push boundaries so that maybe Apple or Google see this and are more inclined to push the envelope and like incorporate things.
Well, the decentralization of currency and everything, which is kind of what cryptocurrency is all about, on top of all the stuff that we're seeing at Veve, is I don't know, and I'm sure though people will fight you, but it's more because they may be ignorant. I don't know how, and once again, I'm preaching to the choir here, everybody in this channel, everybody watching. It's such a massive game changer for the world. It's as big as anything we've ever seen, and we all know that. And so, I mean, literally, the sky's the limit. It's just, we don't even know what's going to happen. The repercussions, we don't know, right? It's madness.
Yeah. So in terms of, you know, we talk about promises and community members being upset and things like this. How, with you as like a business person, someone who's had a business, how do you go about speaking to that, you know, that audience and bringing them back into the fold and making them feel okay, like this is not a rug and we have the best intentions. We're running around to, you know, trying to build this out with our head on fire, as you said, while our hair was on fire, you know?
I think they've done a lot of good work, and you know, it's funny, people are, you know, as mad as ever on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Unhappy as ever. But really, I think if you look at the last really 4 or 5 months, they've really accomplished quite a bit. And maybe, you know, I'm sure people disagree with me and think I'm a moon boy or what, you know, whatever. But I do think they've accomplished quite a bit. You know, they've got to keep it going. It's always, you know, what have you done for me lately? And so as they continue to execute again and again and again, it'll be up to other people whether or not they want to come back and be involved with the project. But and I've said this in my videos, and I'll say this about anything, because people, you know, ask me, oh, do you think McFarland's gonna, you know, how do you think, you know, I don't know, right? But what you want to see, and I'm kind of putting on my hat as an investor, you know, people who invest in companies, is you want to see all these different things. Can you build your product? But now it's, can you, in a rigorous manner, onboard users, improve that you can get new users. Like you have some sort of formula that's repeatable. And maybe that repeatable formula is, we go to the different cons, we have a booth, we put out great videos, we give free NFTs, and we're able to onboard. Now, I don't know. Once again, I'd heard that we were onboarding, 50 to 60 people a day at San Diego Comic-Con, and people were laughing. Okay, and that's fine. You can laugh. But right now there's probably 5,000 core users on this app.
Yeah.
If you look at somebody, and so if you're doing 50 a day, now I don't think you're going to be able to repeat that now because Comic-Con's over. But if you did 50 a day, that's like a lot per month.
Yeah.
And
1%.
Yeah. And so if you can repeat that month over month, nobody's laughing, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have churn, which, meaning you're going to lose users. So, but can you keep 10% of them? That's another number they probably know and should track. But, you're keeping them with the MCP, you're keeping them with the fun crafting, you're keeping them, you know what I mean, right? You get the one, you do the Wreck-It Ralph, you get the pencil, you're probably going to stay for 4 more months to get the other pencil. I got you. These are good types of, once again, so if you're in a meeting and you're, raising money, I'm sure, I don't know if they need to raise money. They're probably making a ton of money, but what, you know what I'm saying? It's, how are you going to keep your users? Okay, they got a really good answer that we got the MCP program. It's not quite done, but we're also doing these burning mechanisms where we have this Sleepyn Comics idiot who bought these gems over an entire year and then built the Infinity Gauntlet. We got him for a year. So, so they have mechanisms in place right now. The question, which we're all interested in, is show me the formula of how you are going to get, whatever it is, 50 new users a day. Because once you have that formula down, then of course, from a business perspective, they always say you want to pour gas on that, right? You want to basically pour money on it because you figured out the wheel that you can spin, and you just want to spin the wheel faster. So it's never that clean, right? So maybe we're going to be able to pick up 500 new users from, and I'm talking total, from San Diego Comic-Con, New York, DCon, and maybe there's another one they find in the spring. I think they went to someone in maybe it was in New Zealand or, some sort of, or Shanghai or something. Maybe they go to some con there. Okay. So, and then we're going to get 1,000 users because we're going to do, it's piecing it together. Right. But if you could bring on 10,000 new users over the next year, I know that's not 1 million that they've talked about, which is one of the biggest mistakes I think they made, was when they said they had 1 million users or whatever.
Yeah, 2.3.
And some of that's terminology, we know, right? Maybe it was 1 million users from a downloads perspective, but clearly wasn't 1 million buying in the market, right? So, if you can say I'm going to get 10,000 a year and this is our formula, then you're on your way. Yeah. That's a business. That's from my business perspective, right?
Yeah, sure. It's growth. It's all about.
And if you can't show me that, which, no offense to them, but they haven't shown us that. That's the one. And some of it's, and there's all kinds of excuses, right? The market's down. Everybody hates, crypto, all these elements, A, B, C, and D. But that is the biggest thing, because even if you're failing in other areas, if you can show that you can still onboard users, then you've got a chance. If you can't onboard users and you're losing users, then it's over, right?
Yeah. I think part of that is, like you said, about money, because all the headlines that were built around Stan Lee were 7,000 NFTs sell out immediately and like 500x or whatever. Those are the headlines. And that's what draws people to the space, at least at first. So I do think, another market cycle, development on things, getting deliverables out, that's the secret sauce. Because the one thing that, say what you want about like their development cycles, the product resonates with people. And that's why people can't leave, right? And the community has been built around the depth and the breadth of all this IP. It's a one-stop shop for collecting, pretty much anything.
Well, and that's the other thing about collecting is one thing you cannot buy is time. So in other words, if you say, this is a brand new thing, we've been around for 2 months, it's going to be really, really valuable. Well, I don't know. You've been around for 2 months. That's half of the problem with digital collectibles. They're like, what, they've been around 2-3 years. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know if they're going to stand the test of time, but each year that goes by, each, and some companies are going to make it and some companies are going to not, but let's just fast forward to 5 years. It's 5 years now. These comics are doing pretty well. Marvel seems pretty committed. See what I mean? It's time is on your side if you can kind of stick around, especially in the collectible game, I feel like.
Yeah, because then you legitimize yourself and you're a known name, you're a known entity, as opposed to like this flash in the pan or whatever.
Which a lot of collecting is that. It just is. I'm not trying to be
Right, because because for every, I mean, it's rare that you have something that stands the test of time. The majority of them are like Beanie Babies, right? They're fads. They shoot up, they pump and they dump, and then everyone's like, "Oh, here we go again. I told you so." And so,
and
yeah,
from the comic perspective, and I get this question all the time, and my answer, of course, is I don't know, which people don't like to hear that, but it's the truth, is why are these digital comics going to be worth anything? Because they're not the real ones. They're clear. Here's the real one right here. You know what I mean? So how can they have any value going forward at all? Like, it doesn't conceptually make sense to a lot of people. And I get it. Believe me, I get that. Like, I totally get that.
it's a paradigm shift. And like every paradigm shift, there's a barrier to understanding it. And it's not until it's like kind of like normalized and you have multiple exposures to it. Because even the concept and idea of Bitcoin, now Bitcoin is, it's a legitimate part of people's portfolios. You go back 10 years, what was Bitcoin was like, it was Ponzi scheme, it was whatever. Now you
And I'm
got,
sure the scams were insane, right?
yeah, correct.
But it's funny because that's what they said about the internet too, right? If you remember,
Correct.
It's a scheme, whatever.
Yeah.
Why would you do
There's
the
that
web?
famous headline,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
So any emerging new technology doesn't mean that it's going to make it, but you shouldn't be dismissive of it for those, citing those reasons.
And then it's the game of the, why is, let's just use this comic again. Why is this comic $100 on Veve? The reason why it's $100 on Veve is because of all those things. It could be a scam. We don't have that many users. No one knows if this thing is going to last, because if we had answers to all those questions, then it wouldn't be $100 on Veve. It would be, whatever. I don't even know. This comic is expensive comic. So, whatever, 500, I don't know. We don't know but it'd be worth a lot more. So when you're, buying, whatever it is, Incredible Hulk for, I think it's at like 40 gems right now, Incredible Hulk #1. That's why it's at, that's why it's there. So it's both good and bad, right? It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. So want to know if you were a web dev?
Yeah, I'm a .NET web dev. I've done it for years. Yeah, so I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Like I said, I started my first company when I was 21, and that was a web tech company. So that's where I kind of really started to code. My last company that I was president of, it grew and grew and grew. And so we had a dev team there of about 5 people. 6 people if you count anyways, whatever. And I was president, so my coding skills just got totally wiped out because I hardly did anything there because I was involved with a lot of other things. And so after we sold that company, then they paid my salary actually for a year, so it was nice. So I just was sitting around, and so then I got back into it and coded a bunch of fun stuff, and so that was good. So that's I kind of got some of my skills back. And in the current company, I do a lot. It's a small company, and we're just trying to build it, so I do a lot of everything. That's what if you're in a building a company, you do whatever. If there needs to be accounting, good. If you're doing sales, good. If you're got to code something, you code something. That's just how it is.
Yeah. How do you like the waitlist system?
I think it's good. I mean, there's kind of, there's different aspects of it, right? I think it has to be that way because it's an equitable way. I mean, the alternative is I can push it faster than you and I'm closer to the data center. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? There's no other way. I think from a ease of use, it's actually really good. You have a half an hour there to get into the wait list. The mechanics of it are great. I don't know if you've ever done the wait list over at the Bat Cowl Land, but it's not very
I did it.
friendly.
Yeah, I mean, I did for the first, but that big Superman action comic. Yeah, it was that was terrible. I don't know if they've
Well,
since.
they've gotten better, but it's still not very friendly. So they've, love or hate it, and it's really, really good. Now there's some issues with the rebound. It says you get it, but you don't, and it's
Right.
process. I think they'll work out. They'll fix those bugs. They'll fix those bugs. I know it's frustrating, and it is frustrating for me as well when we see those things, but they'll fix those, and we should be good to go. But and then of course it opens the door for MCP and all this other stuff that they want to do with the wait list. So
Yeah, and what's your game there with MCP? I know that you've had a strategy, right?
So I did send us some quick math, napkin math. I did a video on it. I think a week or two ago. I don't know if you saw it,
I did, yeah.
but I thought it's going to be. I think that it's going to be compelling. Obviously, that you get more waitlist slots or whatever you want, tickets, whatever you want to call them. I think those will be, especially with our user base right now, will be very, very compelling potentially, depending if you have a lot of tickets. So I like that. And then even if it's a complete failure, let's just say the tickets. And what I mean by not a complete failure in the sense that it doesn't. Well, if it works, I think if it doesn't work, they're going to fix the bugs. But I'm saying like at an architectural level, it's not very compelling for whatever reason. I just think they'll just keep tweaking it until it is compelling. They want it to be compelling.
Yeah.
So if for whatever reason people think MCP is stupid after everything they do, they'll just be like, well, you know what? Every month you get a free drop. They will manipulate. That's a strong word, manipulate, but they will change it to be compelling. And then, so for me, over the past year, I use that website, Veve Setlist. I don't know if you've ever gone there before, vevesetlist.com. Oh, it's a great one. vevesetlist.com. Yeah, that's what it is. Really great website. You go there and I sort by MCP point per dollar. So it will show you the cheapest set per MCP point. It's generally right now, I think it's the presidential stamps or whatever. So I think they're like $2.50 per MCP point or something like that, if you were to buy the stamps, the stamp set. And then also the rare comics tend to be the really, really cheap ones tend to be the best bang for your buck. You can go to the website, you can sort by it and whatnot. That's what I say to everybody because they're like wondering. And so I have been, periodically going to that, looking for literally the cheapest thing, and I'll just buy it. And a lot of times it's like $2 or like 5 gems or something like that. And I'll just, so slowly over time, I have accumulated quite a bit of I have quite a bit of stuff, but a lot of it is MCP oriented. So I am a master collector, and I think a lot of people are, but I have about, I don't know, 2,500 comics and collectibles, which does put me in the top 100.
Wow.
So, but I probably won't be able to stay there. There's some people that are crazy. They're buying a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and there's movement. I was looking at some VV Fox data last week, and that showed that a lot of the top 100 were adding.
Yeah, I've fallen out of it, and then there was a couple weeks where I bought a bunch of comics, so I kind of got back into it. It obviously doesn't show you value, because if you had, 500 Todds, that would be different than having 500, common comics, right? Or
Yeah.
it depends on the comic, right? But I think it's an indicator. But the other thing which I want to do on my channel, and what I'm going to do is, it's a numbers game. So let's just say that you could spend $500 and get some good amount of points, MCP points. Let's just say on average you're spending $5 per MCP point, whatever. Okay. Then that would give you this % chance to get drops. And then if you got the drop, you could sell it. So it's a numbers game. So if you're spending $500, but you're making 1,000, I'm simplifying everything, obviously. Right. That seems to make really good sense, right? So that's the numbers that I want to do once MCP program has kind of been out and launched.
Yeah, and I see that, with McFarlane having their XP points already active, you see how that incentivizes you to, move up the leaderboard, and it gamifies everything. So, I went out and bought like a dragon that was legendary because it gave me like ×3 or whatever points. And so it's going to be really big once it hits on Veve. At what point do you get frustrated though that it's still not out? Because it's been, now we're August, right? So, and the numbers are still funny. I was talking to my collectibles yesterday, and he's saying that his calculations are off. I think Sanjay said the same thing.
Obviously, they've got to fix that, right? There's no other way to say it other than there's two things that they got to fix. Number one, when they say it's off, is the daily should be right on. I don't know how that could be off. I mean, I know how it could be off, but I mean, you'd think they'd be able to fix that or whatever, and they should, talk to Mitch or whomever, right? Now, the backwards compatibility to the beginning of time, that one, I think probably is difficult, and they've said it's difficult. They probably, remember they bridged the gap in between from GoChain to IMX. They moved all the stuff. Did they move a different database? Or they keep all, it sounds madness, right? Which would be very difficult to try to figure that out. And so they might just have to it might not be great, right, for some of those people, but hopefully going forward on a daily basis, it's correct. And there's all kinds of small little things like that I forget that you could get numbers on. So I mean, if you complete a set, you get 100 MCP points one time only. Yeah. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah. So it's been so long, you got to do a refresher.
And then it's you log into the thing every day, you get a point. There's some crazy stuff there, right? And then there's if you don't log in for 30 days, it goes dormant or something. I don't even, there's,
it's definitely going to create that engagement that will make it stickier. And it's kind of like staking rewards, right? Like you said, you put money in and you're guaranteed these drops, and it's it's not guaranteed, but
yeah,
correct.
Yeah. And I did one on the OMI staking as well. I tried to do some numbers. I don't know if you saw that one, but if you put in $1,000 and it only goes up to a cent, I did a bunch of numbers. Could you get your money back? And, they're going to give you a collectible every season. And I did, I thought you could sell these collectibles for maybe 100 gems. And I tried to do a bunch of numbers around it.
Yeah.
Just for fun. It's all for fun. Right. But I do those because I'm already thinking about that type of stuff. So I like to kind of expose my brain towards some of the stuff. Hopefully people find it interesting. If they don't, that's fine. They don't need to watch, but then the other thing is it's part I'm trying to tell people what I'm thinking. And then it's part maybe it's actually useful. Maybe people actually find that useful.
You know what? Another question that leads me to the next question is, as you're more of a collector of Veve, you're not really into the crypto stuff as much. Does the OMI utility program incentivize you as a collector to go out and buy the token? Is the utility, does it have enough incentive to make it people adopt it?
I think it's intriguing enough. Yes, I do at this point. And I own crypto. I had a bunch of crypto back in 2014 or something like that. Wow. A bunch of Bitcoin. And then when it jacked up in 2000, I think I was buying it for 500. And then when it went to 20,000, then it fell back to 17. I freaked out and I sold it all. But this was back in
that's good profit.
Oh yeah, I made a lot of money. Not as much as some of the guys you have on this channel, but it was a lot of money. But so I like crypto. I think it's huge opportunity. I like Bitcoin. I like some of the I like OMI, for what it's worth. But yeah, I think it's intriguing enough to
explore,
to try it out, to go for it. But we'll see. I mean, I certainly am way down in OMI, because when I bought a bunch of the OMI, I bought it for 0.005. Yeah. So half a cent. And now obviously it's under, it's 0.0, it's 000, right? So I've lost, if you want to go by the numbers, I've lost almost everything, right? In terms of what I made. But I've been the term DCA, dollar cost averaging. So I did buy some again a couple months ago.
In this 0006.
Yeah, I think it was actually at 0007 or some not as low as it is right now, but I DCA'd down a little bit, not maybe as much as a lot of you smarter people, but
Yeah.
good enough.
Yeah. Do you, on the OMI side of things, a lot of people are mad that they haven't done anything on the token side of things, and it looks like they've neglected it, ignored it. Why do you think that is? Do you think that is, and why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, once again, I don't know. You've had a lot more people on this channel that know a lot more about that than I do. I think they don't have enough resources. Now, it sounds like they have this new blockchain team or whatever it is. Some people have speculated that, why do anything when we're in a bear market? There's maybe some truth to that. But I feel like, and this is just my stupid, once again, I just don't understand why you don't get it on more exchanges.
Yeah.
And we've heard all kinds of different things in different interviews. It's expensive. So you actually have to pay them or something. I'm not even sure how it all
You have
works.
to pay to get listed on exchanges.
So maybe they didn't have enough money to put it on.
Binance is like $250K, I want to say.
Okay, so maybe they don't have 200. Once again, we don't know, all the ins and outs of it all. Maybe they could do it, but they're like, it's not going to do anything because we don't have any utility, whatever. So it's this kind of chicken and egg thing. But if they don't get their act together, I think this year people are going to get pretty. We talk about the promises, right? That one, I think people are going to get pretty, unhappy about.
And the closer we get to the halving, the more intense that anxiety will be in that FUD.
Yeah, it's the numbers. Once again, I'm a numbers guy. I was a math major, in case you didn't know. That's why I'm always talking about the numbers. But you're a teacher, right?
I'm an assistant principal. Yeah, I'm in charge, and I'm in charge of the math department. But I was an English teacher. But I think in numbers now.
Yeah, little known fact. One of my majors was education. So.
Oh wow, yeah.
So I did my student teaching in Korea. So that's a little bit different. No, I think any way you run the numbers on OMI, man, it is compelling. The question is can they get there? I think someone showed me this thing today. I don't want to dox anybody, but I thought it was the funniest analogy of all time about OMI. And I thought it was true. It was like, OMI's like a rubber band. You're stretching it all the way back. And it's either going to go forward and multiply by 2,000, or it's going to break and smack you in the face.
Yeah. Hope it's not the latter.
Right. But it seems very compelling.
Yeah, you know what? And the narrative, and a lot of crypto is narrative driven, right? And that's what drew me to Veve was OMI. And the narrative around OMI is so compelling because, it's an NFT play with this company that has partnerships with all the major brands, Disney, DC, Marvel, everything, US Post Service, and it's crazy. And they're generating, it's a crypto project that is generating real world revenue, right? They have one foot in the real world, one foot in the crypto world, and they're generating, they've already done over a couple $100 million in revenue. And
I know everybody fudged the crap out of OMI and Veve, and actually they don't. We only hear the 9 bad apples, right?
Well, the loudest voices.
Right, the loudest.
Yeah.
But he's a college professor. We should ask him. He should I need you to double check my math. It just looks good. And I haven't, I used to, in my younger years, I used to, invest in different companies and do research and attempt to be a smart guy. And you
are a smart guy.
So here's 2 stories for you. Okay. So one story was when I was, starting my company, this was literally a long time ago. When the internet was just starting, I had met this guy and he's like, I know you're in this, you're a young guy, you have and he's like, and he had a bunch of money. He's like, I'm going to invest in the top 10 internet companies And I know 9 of them are going to go to business, but one of them will make it and I'll make a bunch of money. I'm like, okay, great. How much are you going to put in? He's like, I'll put 15K into each. I'm like, okay, sounds great. He's like, what are they? I'm like, well, I'm not really sure, but I mean, I can look for you. So I looked it up for him. So, Cisco, Microsoft, Yahoo, Amazon wasn't around yet. So I told him all these different ones, AOL. And I think he put money in all of them. And I think he made money. I talked to him later and he made crap ton of money in all of them.
Wow.
So, you know, you think about, you know, do you invest in the top 10 coins, right? Some of them are going to die. But you might make money in 9, or you might make money in 6 or 7 of them, especially in this. I think about this last bull run. You might have made money in all of them if you got out. The problem is you got to know to when to get out, right? That's not easy,
especially in crypto.
Especially in crypto. So what I've done, and you know, I don't know how I know how but the last bull run, not the last bull run, but the bull run before that bull run where I made a lot of money in Bitcoin. I don't know how I sat through it. And now that I think about it, I never should have done it, because I would like there was one point where I would hit refresh and I made like $7,000 in 1 second. I'm like, is that even reading right? How is that even possible? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Whatever, you know, this is some, you know, the guy you have on a lot is crypto, you know, Crypto Rain, you know, how he talks about something, you know, it's nonsensical. I met a kid who worked on one of the very first, Ethereum wallets. He was, well, I talked to him, he was 19 and he had millions of Ethereum. Wow. And he told me that when it started pumping, he was a senior in high school and he was in science class and he was on his phone and he said he made something like $250,000 in science class.
Oh God. He needs to cut class.
And he's like, I didn't pay attention much to class. So just nonsense, you know, crazy, right? So anyways, but so when that happened, I should have sold. Like, I should have sold so many times and I didn't. For whatever reason, this is odd. The thing that like freaked me out was it got to like 20K and all these everybody started banning it.
Yeah, China.
And I'm from Korea, and they banned it in Korea, and that was the last thing that like freaked me out. Of course, they banned it 10 times, and then they unban it, and then they ban it, and they, you know, whatever. But back then,
that was serious.
That like freaked me out.
Yeah,
and so I sold it all, and that got me out of it. Otherwise, I probably would have stayed in, right? But same things that you talk about on this channel. Another thing is I wasn't over leveraged, so it was a lot of money, but not so much money that I was, you know, out of my mind. I still, you know what I mean? So that's why it is important, I think. And you talk about this, other people do, is you can't be putting in, you know, I'm going to say this, even though I love the guy, but you can't be putting in everything, because you're gonna, you know what I mean? I don't think that's wise. Right. But you know, then you have your brain. But for the most part, what I tell people is just sell on the way up. And you see me do that with comics. So in other words, I bought, you know, people can look at the blockchain, but I own like 30 or 40 Tales of Suspense 39. That's the first appearance of Iron Man. I own like 30 or 40 of them on the Veve app. And I bought them for like around 30, 40, 50, you know, somewhere in there, right? But as it goes up, I'm selling one. And so I'm selling on the way up, and that way you don't get caught, because it's going to, if it collapses, you took some profit. And you guys, I know you talk about that a lot too.
It's important and it's hard, and you have to learn your lessons along the way, right? And I've learned by holding on too long and not, you know, capitalizing. And so then you learn, and you have to make a plan, because the emotions kick in, and that's when
you got to know when you're going to sell, make that plan, and then obviously stick to your plan. But because when it's pumping, it'll be hard to sell. People say it won't, but it actually will be.
Because you're looking at those future gains, right? It's going to.
Well, you're always like, well, you know, and then of course your brain, it's never enough, which is bad, right? You gotta
read. Yeah.
Especially on Veve, I think for the really expensive stuff, it's, you know, if the floor is 20,000, most likely you're not going to be able to sell that thing for 10,000. You got to throw it out there for 15,000, hope someone thinks they're getting a deal, and then you sell. You really don't necessarily sell at those. I think the people that sold like Secret Rare Spider-Man at its peak, 100K. Everybody talks about 100K, but I think the people that actually sold were selling it like 50, 60,000, which once again, still quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
But well, we don't know what they bought in at, right? But we're assuming they got in at, I don't know, but if the floor is 100K, and I'm once again, I'm only talking about the really high end stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're not generally selling the thing for 100K. You're going to have to throw it out there for 50% discount. And then,
Yeah, that's just what the floor is. Doesn't mean that that's what it's selling for. Did you sell a lot during that January pump, that, the height of the market, or?
no. So it was January's pumping, February pumped. And I sold a lot of stuff April, I think.
Okay.
And I tell people why. The reason why I probably wouldn't have. The reason why is I watched Superstar Money's videos.
Oh, yeah?
And for 1 month straight, every day, not every day, but most days, and those guys are super smart, right?
Yeah.
They were saying, we're looking at this and we're looking at putting cheek spreadsheets, and the amount of gems going into the system is not matching. Like at some point, something's going to fall apart here. I'm paraphrasing. You asked them. They had a better way of saying it. Those guys are super smart. But they said it like again and again and again and again. And they were looking with data, right? They were not like making up, oh, I feel like the market's going to collect. No, they were like time and again, they were saying, we are looking at these numbers and they are not adding up. And some bubble is going to pop. And they were right. And so I didn't get out at the top, but I sold maybe 25% of my stuff in May last year.
Is it hard for you as, kind of like a public figure in the community to sell and like have people see it?
No, it is tough. It is tough because I always tell people I get a bunch of DMs. I'm sure you do too. So these are the types of DMs I get. I want to marry you.
I never got that.
Oh yeah, I want to marry you. You're my, what was the one I got the other day? You're my, whatever. Okay. I want to marry you. I want to kill you. Do you get the death threats? I get the death threats.
Never got a death threat either.
That was more last year when everything was collapsing. I put some money in. It's all your fault. I'm going to kill you. Okay. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
I get why are you selling this thing? Cause I put it in the market, are you leaving or whatever, and then, I get a lot of people who want me to buy their stuff. Like, hey, I'm selling this, and there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
And then I get all kinds of, those are the ones that they're fine. All those are fine. Not the death threats. I don't like the
one. Yeah. The marrying one. Yeah, that's all right.
Well, they're all bots. Nothing's real, right? There's not, or they want you to take them on trips. Have you got those yet?
No.
I'd like to go to Spain. Well, I'd like to go to Spain too.
So when's the wedding?
It's fine. I'm all, the ones that really kind of were more difficult was when I switched over my channel. This is about 2 years ago. And a lot of people I knew from the physical comic book community. So I knew these people were like, you're a fucking idiot, or some of them were not there. That was actually very few. Most of them were just like, what are you doing? Like, are you sure you know what you're doing? Are you? And actually those were okay. Cause they were honestly just like, they just wanted me to be careful, right? They actually were reasonable people saying, hey, and I'm like, I'm okay. It's okay. I'm going to throw like, $5,000 in it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Have they seen like the growth of your channel and all that?
Yeah, a lot of them, honestly, because I'm friends with them, were very excited for me. Especially, I switched it over like in like September or something like that, and then we had this huge growth. And the Golden Moments week was a huge week of growth for me. That was just bonkers. That's when my channel really blew up, I'd say, over the Golden Moments, and I think for most people, that was when they got their most growth for. And my channel has been pretty stagnant over the last year.
Same. Yeah.
But it's actually been growing a little bit in the last month. So maybe Veve's doing their thing. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, I'll get, it is a good barometer, right? The subs and followers to you keep your pulse on like the growth through that, because during that hype cycle, I'd put out a video and get like well over 100 new subscribers. Now, if it's a really good video, I'll get like 15, something like that.
Well, the other thing that I have, another barometer that people do not have, is I have Veve ranks Google Analytics. Because I have that website veverank.com. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that.
All my rankings for the
Yeah.
So I can see the analytics on it. So I can see it going down, 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 or I can see it jump up a little bit, or you know what I mean? So that's another barometer that I have. Obviously we're using Veve Fox. Obviously we're using putting this information. We're using so that's another right. We want data, right? We want to see data.
Yeah. Back to Omi, do you think that they'd be wise to target the Omi, the crypto crowd and bring them in? Because it seems like that's not their approach, right? Their approach is the article on Lambo, whatever, but didn't mention Omi at all. And I feel like they'd get more people in through the crypto crowd because they speak the language.
So here's my take on that is I think that the only thing that speaks to that crowd is green candles.
Yeah.
So if you see it month after month pushing, this is going to sound moon boyish, but that's okay. Whatever. I'll get the death threats. Bring the death. I just think if you see a bunch of green candles, day after day, week after week, all the people in crypto, they're looking at everything. Any coin that's explosive, they're interested in, whether it be, we know all the coins, right? So it'll be one of those coins, if it can get there, that's exploding. People are going to take note. And they actually probably know by now. People probably know what it is. They know it's attached to Veve. They may hate Veve, they may love Veve, but the green candles are going to be super attractive.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other thing, which is, once again, I'm sounding like a moon boy, but it's so interesting, is that I think, whatever they said, I don't know what the marker is, 20% of the population of Veve owns Omi. So that leaves 80% of other people that could potentially buy Omi. And they don't need to drop. They don't need to go in and buy 100 million. You do the numbers. If each of them buy 100,000, the numbers get crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that people, like you said earlier, we have that million person number, whatever, collector for Veve. You don't need that many. 20,000 people would move everything.
If you had 20,000 core users, and I think we have 5,000, so 4 times, which is not easy to get. And, once again, we think it's so easy, right? It's hard. It'd be a different game. It would be a different, I don't even know what would, it'd be madness.
Do you think they look like they're trying to target Asia? Do you think that it will gain some traction over there?
It's very possible. Some of these IPs, some of these IPs are huge in Asia.
Did you see the Astro Boy?
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar. I've heard of it, but I'm not very.
I've seen it, but I'm not just like maybe people are gonna like hate me, whatever. But like Ultraman, some of the other ones. I'm not in the anime as either, so I don't know. Obviously, I understand the significance and the huge amounts of fans that these types of IPs have. I just think it's if we're able to get into these other markets and IPs are the way to go, then it could be huge. We could see another, Walt Disney was really, I think the 2 biggest pieces to bring onboard users were Omi, when it was doing well, onboarded a bunch of people. They bought the coin, then they bought the collectibles, and then the golden moments were huge. And the golden moments was this kind of weird, perfect storm, because the whole world probably had extra money at that point because of the way the finances of the world, on top of the fact that NFTs were hot. Everybody wanted NFTs. This can be, look at these board, you could make $1 million in a day or in a minute, right? And then it's Walt Disney. So you put those 3, and that's it. Boom.
Yeah.
And they recapture that? I don't know.
Do you think there are other IP out there that'll move the needle in the same way? You think it's like, if any, do you think it's like anime, or what do you think?
Sure. Maybe K-pop, right? K-pop is
yeah.
No, I think there could be, and we gotta see. I don't know. I think everybody wants that, right? Because we've seen it one time, just kind of literally
Yeah.
1 week of insanity. I think it's going to be more, I talk about some of my companies sometimes do it. I think it's more hand-to-hand combat. You're going to have to go get 25 a day. And I know that's not, glamorous, but it'll build your app.
Scratch and claw your way there.
That's just, that's maybe, and that's kind of my mentality. Maybe maybe everybody's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you've never, built a global company, so maybe I'm a wimp. Maybe I'm wimpy. I don't know. But I don't know. I'll take 25 a day. 25. Let's just
Yeah,
go
I
get
think
25.
just when you do the numbers, right? And if whatever 5,000 daily active, 50 people is 1%. So if you can do that 10 days in a row, you just grew 10%. You
Right.
compound that over time.
Yes. They're
That's
telling
great.
their brothers and their sisters. I mean,
Correct.
now we know of those 50 people, only 5 are staying. 45 are like, I bought a thing. This is stupid. I'm out of here. Oh yeah. Pokemon. How did I forget Pokemon?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. That's just,
Totally.
that's just,
We've given up on Pokemon.
right. No, that blows it all away.
Oh yeah,
That's
game changer.
ridiculous. There's a couple of these IPs I'm sure that were missing, and I apologize because I'm not a Pokemon guy. That blow it away, right? It's out of control.
Yeah.
So what about you're just sticking it out. You're holding, you're in for a while.
Yeah, I see the vision. It makes sense to me. I try to bottom line things when I'm, sometimes we miss the forest for the trees and we get stuck in minutia and like small details and like I'm angry about this and I'm angry about that. And there are things to be angry about and things to be upset about and frustrated about, but I always try to bottom line things. And when I do that with Veve, I see that the product resonates, right? And people who are angry, they still go for the drops and they still like the product. So that tells me something that if they're able to fix those problems that piss people off, fix their communication, that they have something there. And, I'm more on the crypto side of things. So I have an OMI bag and I'll circle back and accumulate Veve collectibles, once my OMI bag pumps. But then there'll be that arbitrage between the two, which is also interesting.
Right. Yeah. That'll be weird.
Yeah. So that's my,
and you're going to be able to buy the NFTs with OMI, right?
Yeah. And then there's like the whole OMI to NFT thing, which will incentivize people to use OMI because it cuts back, I think, a couple percentage on, the fees.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What's this question? What about the potential impact of KYB? Think there will be a demand for business to buy and hold comics and collectibles? Know your business?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's, this isn't proven enough.
Yeah.
This hasn't been around enough. I don't even know how many, they say that's been the biggest rumor of all time, that there's all kinds of companies that go to these Comic Cons and they're buying AF-15s and putting them in vaults. Maybe, I don't know. And we're talking about, those are collectibles that have been around a long time and kind of proven, so I don't know if there's companies or investment companies or other places that are coming in and buying. I don't know.
Digital.
Feel like they buy Bitcoin before they'd buy Todd.
Correct. And they're just putting their toe in the water with Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah. Yes. We saw all they're just getting that. Once again, anything's possible, and especially with other countries that we don't know about. And, we talk about some of the Middle East companies that they actually, I've seen videos where there's people that have these vaults full of.
Yeah. You saw that on
TikTok, that's legit. Guy? Maybe it's not legit. Maybe it's only one guy. Maybe, I don't know. Okay.
Still, yeah.
But yeah, could we get a couple people that are really rich from the Middle East, or other people that really like Veve? They like what they're seeing. They come in and they dump $1 million. If you put $1 million into Veve collectibles,
it'll move. Yeah.
There was a day that some guy bought $1 million in OMI. What was that? I was like about, what was that like in the spring sometime? You remember that?
I don't remember.
He definitely moved the price.
Yeah, if you buy $1 million in OMI, you're moving that needle.
No, I think it was Randy would know, of course, but like, I think it was like one day, it was like this, it was about in the spring, and some guy bought $1 million of OMI. And it was legit. Like, he had all kinds of other altcoins in his wallet or something. Someone looked at it, and it was, he wasn't fooling around.
Now that's worth $5,000 or what?
Yeah.
95%.
No, I mean, he did it when it was pretty low.
Okay, yeah.
You know, it was
Zero.
999 or I think actually it was. I think it
About
broke.
600. It's about 600,000 now.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
he's lost some money, but I'm sure
he's gonna diamond hand that. He'll be
I'm
fine.
sure he or she is doing okay.
Yeah. Well, we've been on for an hour and a half. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you coming on. You're one of the, in my opinion, one of the best voices in the community because you're so rational. Because I think you have that math. I noticed this as an assistant principal, and I see all the different departments. The math teachers are always super rational, using logic, and that's why I love talking to you.
I appreciate being on. This is great. And I really like your channel. This is, and you're kind of, you're earlier for me, at least, because I'm in Central Time. And so you have always great guests and they have great discussion. And so I'm able to, I'm kind of getting dinner ready sometimes or other things. So I think it's a great time slot.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Tomorrow I'm going to have actually Ryan on.
Yeah, I saw that. That'll be good. That'll be really interesting.
That's going to be good. This is my first time with a team member. I think it'll be cool. So thanks to everyone in the chat for coming through. Come through again tomorrow afternoon. If you don't already sub to this guy, make sure that you do. But I'm sure that you do. Just don't send him death threats or marriage proposals. Thanks, brother.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Take care.